Okay. So we were discussing about what are the inheritance, what is inheritance, and why do we need inheritance, and what are the different types of inheritance. To category different categories we have single inheritance, multi-level, hierarchy, and hybrid. Okay, and we looked into one example like why this multiple inheritance is not possible. Okay, so because of the ambiguity. So when you try to call the same method from the parent in the different classes, then it will be kind of a confusing. Okay, so it's like when we have one class is trying to uh, acquire the properties of two different classes. Okay, so in that case, it's kind of like a multiple inheritance, which is not possible. What we'll discuss about how can we make it as possible. Okay, so through the interfaces that we can do. Yeah. So let me take up the example of inheritance. There are this is very important. Everybody will talks about how this inheritance is directly possible. Okay, one is with help of extends keywords. Another one is we have the method called. So this is easy relationship. Okay, so when you are talking about an easy relationship, for example, vehicle is a car, animal, dog is an animal. Okay, so likewise, I'm taking vehicle is a car. Okay, so sorry, car is a vehicle. Say car is a vehicle. Okay, car is a vehicle, and here we can say that as a relationship, we call it as association. Okay, association. In this, we have a as a relationship. So in this has a relationship. Now you can see car has an engine. Okay, every car has an engine. Okay, so here you can see vehicle is a car is a vehicle. So there is another thing that we can have anything that the Jeep is a vehicle and motorcycle is a vehicle. Okay, so but here you can see it's easy relationship. We are trying to extend the properties of vehicle into the car. Okay, there can be multiple classes here. Engine, car has an engine. Okay, but you can see this is no, we have a tight relationship. Okay, so this is here also it is a tightly coupled. Okay, so this is we have a strong relationship between both the classes, and here also we have a strong relationship. Okay, so in this strong relationship again we have two different set of things in association. We have aggregation and composition. Okay, so aggregation is for example, we have a car. Okay, so just to give an example, between association is the strong association between these two classes is every car has an engine. Okay, we have a strong binding. But when we are taking this aggregation, car has a MP3 player. Okay, music player. Okay, so music player, and other one is car has a engine. Which one is strong now? This is weak relationship. Okay, this is kind of a weak relationship. Every car may have the music player, may not have the music player. That is it's not mandatory. It's a weak relationship. But here strong is every car has an engine. Okay, every car has an engine. So likewise, I'll take another example. Here we have a software company. Okay, software company. In that, you can see there is an employee. Okay, another thing is there is a team. Okay, teams within it. So if company does not exist, employee may not exist, but employee may be, see for example, this is a X company. Okay, XYZ company. XYZ company. Okay, so if XYZ company does not exist, employee still exists. Okay, so the relationship between the employee and the company is it is weak relationship. But teams, when you call it as teams, okay, teams is we can take we have a dev team and QA team. Okay, QA team. It's kind of when we are trying to relate this. Okay, so the relation between this employee and company is kind of a weak relationship. But when the relationship between the teams and the company is tight relationship, because if company does not exist, there are no teams existing, right? So if teams also kind of it is dependent on the company. How can we name these teams are like, dev team or QA team if the company does not exist? Okay, if the company is not there, there are no teams, but still we have employees here. Okay, employees can work for some ABC company. Okay, so if employee TCS, for example, TCS is closing their company, then these teams and everything will be closed down. Okay, but still employee can go and work for some Infosys or some other companies, right? So this is nothing but this is kind of like a composition. Okay, when we have a team connection strongly built with like, where classes are built strongly, then the relationship between two classes are built strongly, then it is composition. If it is weak in the sense, it is like you can see MP3 player is like, it's not mandatory to have the MP3 player for all the cars. Okay, some cars may have it, may not have it. That's nothing but it's a weak relationship. But every car should have an engine. To move, we should have an engine. That's nothing but it's kind of like a composition. Okay, so one is aggregation. So weak relationship is like aggregation, and strong relationship is like a composition. Okay, we'll see how can we achieve this inheritance with the help of association. Okay, so we call it as like association. In this association, we have two types. One is aggregation, another one is like composition. Okay, within that composition, which is strong and which is weak is like the strong is composition and weak is aggregation. Okay, so we'll see the example about it. So yesterday we looked into the extended property, extends properties. Okay, how do we extend the classes or acquire the properties of different classes? Okay, so with the help of extend keyword. But today we are not going to use any extends keyword, but still we can achieve the inheritance. Okay. So create class called inheritance association. Okay. So for this, to achieve this, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create two different classes. I'm going to create employee class. Another one is like I'm going to create. So I have employee class again. Employee class association. Otherwise, I can just say that EMP class. Okay, so just to define the class. So here I'm going to create string name, string designation. Okay, so these are the two things which are related to the employee. And come to the, so every employee will have some address, right? So here I'm going to create address class. Okay. So it should be renamed. I'm renaming this class now. Address class. Okay. So what are the different things what we can put as like address is like address string. Let us take e-location. Okay. So e-location. So for this, I'm going to create the constructors. One way is like directly we can create the constructor saying like this string and everything. Okay. So this is like manually we are doing, but with the help of like, there is an option that we have, the shortcut. It is given as part of ID. Is nothing but we can go ahead and create the constructor. Okay. So using these fields. So these are the two fields that I'm creating the constructor. Okay. So this is not mandatory. Now you see. Now we have address and employee class. Okay. Employee class also I'm going to create constructor for this. Go to source, enter a constructor in the fields. Okay, so we have created the fields. Okay, the super keyword is not required. Now we have these two classes. Okay, so now we have these two classes. How do we create the association between these two classes? Now you see, I'm going to create a main method here. Okay, so but I need to have this class associated with this class, right? So for this reason, what I'm going to do is like I'll take this class. I'll take this class and I'll create reference for that address class. Okay? So here I'm going to put it as like an address. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to take this one as like dot address. Okay. Now you see, I did not create, sorry, this is address class, right? So let me just put this address class here in the MP class. I'm putting it in the wrong place. Okay. So we have created the constructor and I'm passing this constructor in the employee because we want to frame, we want to create the relationship between these two classes. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is like, I'm just taking this address class as a reference. Okay. And I'm just creating C. This is like, this is nothing but a reference variable. Okay. So now it's like when I create the object, MP is equals to employee class. You see, I'm going to use the employee name as like Nikant, give a lead, then here. So what I need to pass is like, now you see, I've created object for this class. Okay. And I'm trying to refer the variables, whatever I have just specified in the address class should get initialized, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to create address is equals to new address. And here I'm going to pass this values. Okay. So one is like the address. So I'm saying it is like, for example, Hyderabad. Location is like Srinagar. Okay. Now we got this. So what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to pass this as like a parameter. So we have this constructor here. Okay, string e address, e location. E address and e location. Let me take them. We already defined it. Now you see, we have this address created. Okay. So what it does is like, now we are framing the relationship between these two classes. Okay. Employee and address class. Now you see, I did not use any extend keyword here. What I'm trying to do is like, just I'm going to pass this like a parameter to this constructor. Okay. Employee class constructor. And I'm just referring to this dot address is equals to address. Okay. So here you see, I'm just creating a reference for this and I've created the object. I'm passing this object as like a parameter to the EMP class constructor. Okay. So now I will get the address Hyderabad and Lingapalli as like the values from the address class. Now what I'm going to do is like, I'll just create a simple, otherwise I'll try to print it here in the main method. Okay. So now you see ename. Okay. So still we have some problem with it. I'll show like I'm not using any variable here, object for calling this method, right? So how can we access the methods of this particular class with help of object, or we have to make it as like a static. Okay. I don't want to make it as like static, but still I can use emp ename emp dot ename. Okay. So now how many things we have to pass it as like, how many things we need to print now? There are like 5 variables. Okay. Ename, designation, address, and here address, e-address and e-location. Okay. So there are like 4 variables that we have. Designation, p dot sign, and here employee address. So here Now, from where I'm going to get it now? So employee is like still we have this values parameter set as like no, this is like I'm just passing it as like a parameter. So from where I need to get this employee address, if for example I need to get the employee address. So this is located in the address, right? So I need to take this one as like address dot. So what are the variables that we have as part of like address class? The address, okay. So employee designation. Oh, sorry, designation is like from where we are getting it from the employee class itself. But here we need to change it, okay. So address dot address, and here location. See, now we have framed the relationship between these two classes, okay. So with the help of like this is called association, but we did not use anything called a extents, okay. So address dot location, okay. So now you see I've created an employee class and address class. Address class will have specifically address and location. Okay, every employee may have a different address and different location, but this particular employee will be working for a certain organization. Okay, so now we are just making the mapping. Okay, mapping is like thing, but here what I'm trying to do is like creating a constructor and I'm passing this one as like a parameter, address reference as like a parameter. So whatever you are going to store as part of this particular address, this will be passed to this and this will be passed back to this particular constructor. Okay, so now this will have the values here. Now when I execute this program, see what is happening now? Employee name, designation, address, location. Okay, so for instance, you are not passing this as like a parameter. Okay, so you are not doing anything. Still, we are getting this. So why are this getting? Why are we getting actually?
Because of object.
We have created the object, right? Let me do one thing. I'll just remove this. I'm going to pass it as like a. I'll just comment this. Okay. Now you see what is happening here. We don't have any object, and still it is trying to access this. So from where we need to create this. So we have object already created, right? Which address it is referring now. So this is like, it's not referring to the address. Okay. So let me just remove this. Not required actually. I have just created the address variable. That is why it is not referring to that. Okay. So let me do one thing. I'll make this one as like static. Otherwise, I can just use this one as like a address here. I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to pass it as like a address. So which address it is taking now? Now you see we have created the address, but this address is still not yet pointing to this. So let me just take this one. Address. Let me do one thing, guys. I'll just try to create this outside of the class. Actually, it's like in main class if you create the problem. Let me just do it public. Click void employee. I'm just taking to avoid the static things. Okay, this is a different method that I'm trying to add. wait for employee details. Now you are getting these details. Okay. So let me do one thing. Anyways, what it is doing now, this is like an address, static address it has taken. So when we say that address is equals to new address, so what are we doing here? We are invoking the constructor of this particular class. Okay. So this class constructor will be invoked and we are going to get those values assigned here. Okay. So after this is what I'm going to pass it as like a parameter to this particular constructor. Okay. This class. So now what it does is like it's going to get the details of this particular address class inside this constructor. That's nothing but here we are using this dot address. So what it does is like it's going to map this address, whatever we have created. So this will be pointing to this particular address. Okay. So here we have to use like static. We can use employee.e class, employee class dot address. So we are going to call this particular instance variable. Okay. It's kind of like an instance variable, but we have a class here. So we call it as like a reference variable. This particular variable will be referring to this class. Okay. Let me go and execute this. So you got the details. So did we use any extends keyword here? We did not use any extends keyword. What we are trying to do is like just we are creating object for that class and we are trying to get those class details here in this employee class and we are passing those details as like a constructor. So this here in this constructor, we are going to invoke this particular reference variable. That's nothing but now it is turned into the object. So this will have like address. We'll throw all this, the details of that. This is nothing but it is referring to this address. So once you refer it, so it's going to get the details. When you say employee details, you can see you are going to access this. So because we have taken this address and everything as like similar name, so that is the reason why. So I'll just use this as like add. Static context. This static context will not work here because the reason is like we are using the static and we are trying to use non-static. Okay. So employee we can create because employee class is like a kind of object that we are going to create. Okay. So here I'm going to change it and do one thing. Still it is saying that it is kind of like a address is non-static. Here what I'm going to do is like I'll just this pass as like parameter. Okay. So I'm going to return address. I'm just showing yes, other way also we can do it. So what are we going to do is like we are going to take this one as like. So but how do we pass these values now? So because this is the constructor, this is the object that I've created. After that, I'm going to call it as like a parameter. So in this case, it is like a kind of like we are doing after object is created. But what is that? What is the use of the constructor? We have to initialize the instance variables of that particular class when we are creating the object. Okay. So this would not work the approach. Okay. So I'm trying to show you the other approaches, but still you can go ahead with the approaches now. See. So what I'm trying to do is like just I'm trying to create. This is already there. So I need to just pass it as like a parameter. So it is like it is not accepting in this case. So what I'm doing is like I'll just change it the way it is working. This is the address that I need to change it here. So I need to make it as like static. Everything is fine. Okay. So now you see, I did not use any set of extends keyword. Okay. Only thing is like I'm taking this class as like a, this is like a reference variable to this class, and I'm getting those values through the constructor. So here I'm just creating the object of that class, and I'm taking those values and passing it as like a parameter to the next class. So here we are making it as like a kind of a connections between two classes. We are framing the relationship. Now you see that employee details. Now, did I create anything here extends? No, I did not use anything extends here. Okay. So this is how we'll be creating the relationship between these two classes. Okay. So are you getting this, guys?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So only thing is like what we did is
Just
like,
once again explain.
okay. So let me go to the address class here. So we have, first I have created the address. Okay. I know that every employee is going to have the address. So I've taken two instance variables. That is nothing but we have string address and string e-location. Okay. After that, I'm going to create a constructor because I want to initialize the instance variables of this particular class. So how I'm going to do it? Here I'm going to use this keyword e-address, and so on. Okay. So after that, I've created an employee class. In that employee class, I'm assuming that there are like there can be a e-name, and we have like a designation, and we have like a address that I need to pull it from the other class. Okay. For that, what I'm going to do is like I'm just using this as like a address variable, as address variable. You can take this one as like a address variable. So here what I'm doing is like I can remove this actually. It should accept, but let me just check what is that actually it's showing there. Let me create the address. So ADR, I'm going to pass it as like so here. Yes, I passed it as like a parameter here. Yes, now the static is gone. I've just created. Now we got the results. Okay. So I'll explain what I just made the change. Okay. To remove the static. So now I'm coming to this employee class. I'm framing the relationship. Now it's like kind of like I have an address class and a reference. Okay. So reference to that particular class. Okay. So after this, what I'm trying to do is like here in the public static void main. So I've created the constructor for this class, and I'm just passing it as like an address variable, address object. Let us take this is an object, and this object is like I'm passing as like a parameter so that I can refer to this class and get the variables of this class for printing. Okay. For the purpose of using it somewhere. So after this, what I'm doing is like I've created the main method. Inside this main method, I've just created the variable, the object for this particular address class. Okay. So this I'm passing as like a parameter. Now this will be taken like when the constructor is calling. Okay. So when the constructor is called, so it will go here and it will take like so this is nothing but ADR is pointing to this, and this will be pointing to this, and this will be pointing to this. Okay. Now when I'm trying to access from where I'm going to get these values, these are the values that I'm getting. So only thing is like now you see when I try to execute this, see what happened now, null pointer exception because e-address, because this dot address is null. I want to show you this actually because we are using the static context and we are using the same address reference variable while creating here. So it was like it was making the difference. Now what I did is like I just created the address and I'm giving the different object name. Okay. I'm not, see, now it is not passing values to this particular class, right? So what it is doing is like null pointer exception. When I remove this, now what it is doing is like, it is sending these values as like a parameter, okay? So arguments to this particular constructor. Now this will go here and it will pass it as like a parameter, okay? Nothing but we have got this object created. Now if I create the object to this class, I can access the values of this class easily, right? So that is the reason why we are getting this null pointer exception. The object is not created, so that is the reason why it is showing the null pointer exception. But we have the object and the values which are assigned to that instance variables of this address class. Okay. address class. In that case, what it is doing is like now it is passing the values. When I call employee emp.employee details, then it is going here and it is getting the values. Okay, so one is like it's getting two, the first two lines are getting the values from this particular class, and the next two lines are getting the values from the address class. Okay, so this is nothing but the association. Okay.
You should run contact here.
Okay, so you can have a number of, now you see, you can create the other employee also. For example, I will go ahead and create saying that this address is referring to Secunderabad, the station. Okay, name is Chandu. Stably. Okay, now this is another employee. Okay, now when you see this employee details, now what is happening? So you have to pass this as like a parameter to this constructor. And say this employee will have a different details and this employee will have a different details. Okay, so when I execute this, I will see two sets of employees. And Srikanth, QA lead, Hyderabad, Ningapur, Chandu, dev lead, Secunderabad and Westmont. Okay, so now are we passing any kind of like values here? Are we creating any object of this class within this class and trying to pass? No, we are not doing that. What we are doing, we are just associating these two classes, okay, employee class and address class. So here only the thing is like I've just created the reference variable of this address class as like instance variables in the employee class, and then I'm going to use this address class as like a object here. I'm going to create an object. I'm going to pass a parameter. This will be passed here as like a parameters to the constructor. This will call this constructor, the current class constructor, and it will initialize the instance variables of address class. Once we initialize the instance variables of address class, then what it does is like it will be created, object will be created. Now I can call it at any time. Okay. Now it's like it's all up to us like how many objects that you want to create. So it's like methods, everything will remain same. Only the thing is like you have to create the objects from this particular classes, address and employee, so that they will have the association. Now it's like no use of the extend class. If I just give the extends class, okay, I'll tell you like when do we use the super keyword. Now you say super is not there, but we are initializing the instance variables. But what is the use of super keyword? I'll tell you the difference. I'll take two different classes again. Employee 1, address 1. So observe carefully. I'm going to employee class 1. I'll remove this. I'll just say extends address 1. Now it will throw the error. Okay. Now you see, it's going to say that this is like address 1. It's not matching. Okay, I'll remove this. I cannot use this address because we don't have any relationship between two classes. Now I'll remove this one also. Remove the sense, I'll just park it aside. Okay, I'll comment it. Okay, I'll comment and so that we can discuss how exactly we can make the difference between association and inheritance. Okay. Now you see there is an error here. Showing this error. Now everything is like as is, it's working fine. But you see, implicit, what it says like implicit super constructor address is undefined, must explicitly invoke another constructor. Because whenever we are using address extending any class which has the instance variable here, the extension, the child class is responsible for providing the values of that particular instance variables of that class, parent class. Now what I can do is like I can use the super keyword. Okay. So here I need to pass this as like a values. Okay. It's like, let me comment this, we'll execute and try to execute this. So now this super keyword, I'm using C for super keyword. So I can use the object for this class, right? E dot employee dot e address. Okay. So let me just remove this. So here it's not required because we have already created the object for this class. And this, when we call this emp dot employee details, now it will execute the details of that particular address. Now you see, so we got the same, we achieved the same thing, right? Same thing through the association as well as like extends. Extends keyword is like tightly binding. Now every employee has the address. Okay. I mean to say that a employee, we are creating easier relationship. Okay. Likewise, you can see if we are taking this car and this is like a vehicle. Every car is a vehicle. Okay. So here we doesn't make any sense, right? Every employee is the address. It doesn't say like every employee is the address. Employee is not a address. Employee has a address. Okay. So if it is like a company and is like an employee. Okay. In this case also, like every employee has a company. We have to check for the relationship. Okay. So for example, if you are a child and you like if you are a parent and you have a child. Okay. So what exactly the relationship here becomes is like you are a parent to that. You are a child. You are a parent to that child. Okay. So he is a father. She is a mother. Likewise, easy relationship will be framed. So we have to understand that relationship and then we have to create the relationship between the classes. Okay. So easy relationship is like tightly bound. Has a relationship is like weakly bound. In that has a relationship also, there are two things. Okay. Every company has teams. Every company has employees. Okay. The company, if company doesn't exist, employees still exist. Okay. But teams, if team doesn't exist, then there is no point of putting the company. If company doesn't exist, then teams wouldn't be existing. Okay. So one is like, it's kind of like, I'll simply show you in diagrammatical. So this is very important. See. This is kind of like a object. Okay. So within this, you can see, this is like, this is a company. Every company will have teams and employees also. Okay. Teams. When can we say this is association and when can we say this is like aggregation and this is composite? See, the company, every company have the teams. Okay, every company like has the employees. Okay, every company has employees. But if company doesn't exist, what are the two things that doesn't exist? This employee doesn't exist and teams doesn't exist. But in case of employee can work for other company. Okay, we have other entity and employee can work for other company. But teams move from this company to that company. Like there can be some other names. Here I'm calling it as like a dev QA team. There can be like development team and analysis, some QA analysis team. Okay, so names would be different and this teams it don't be exist. In a simple way, when you take this college, okay, college has students and we have branches. Okay, so if college doesn't exist, students still exist. Okay, but branches related to this college may not exist. Okay, so this is nothing but this is tightly bound. College branches are tightly related. That's nothing but they have tight relationship. But college and students, if student is like is not willing to study in this college, he'll go to the other college. Students still exist. Okay, but if branches and colleges are like tightly bound. Okay, so they are like if one exists, the other would exist. If one doesn't exist, the other wouldn't exist. Okay, so it is the tightly bound actually. Okay, this is called the relationship between college and student is like aggregation, and the relationship between college and branch is like composition, which is strong. This is weak, and this is strong. Okay, so I'm just framing the relationship here. But here you can see that when you are putting the extents, this is like tightly related. Okay, so now you can say this is kind of like a child and this is like a parent. Okay, so we have to understand the relationship, then only we can use this set of concepts. Okay, so generally what happens in case of Selenium is like we are going to use the keywords called extents. So because we want to make the we want to make it as like a tightly coupled. So in some instances, I'll show you like when do we go with aggregations and compositions or associations during the selenium. Okay. Are you clear with this?
Yes, Shikan, yes.
Okay. So let me go ahead with the other concepts. Okay. So oops, polymorphism. Okay, this is the next thing. So what is polymorphism? So it is like derived from the Greek, and we have a lot of things to understand is polymorphism. Okay. Poly in the sense, it's a kind of like, one will have multiple forms. Okay. So let us take an example of, for example, we have shape. It has a different shapes, right? It can be a circle, it can be a rectangle. Still, we call it as like a shape. Okay, different forms, rectangle, a square. Okay. So, for example, we are taking some make noise. Noise, for example, noise is like, so dogs may bark and cats may say meow and tiger or any other, like lion would say roar. Okay, what is happening in this case? One object will have different forms. Let us take like one thing will have different forms. Okay, poly is like single and morphism is like number of forms. Okay, so here in this case we have two types of polymorphism. One is like overloading, another one is like overriding. Okay, so we have some conditions for this. Overloading will be done in same class, and overriding is like in a different class. Okay, so we'll discuss about overloading first, how this overloading can be achieved. Okay, so we discussed about constructor overloading, right? So likewise, we are going to discuss about like method overloading. So now you see, what are the conditions for this overloading? So we should be in a same class, same method name with different params. Okay. So we'll discuss about like access modifiers when we talk about them. Okay. Then other thing is like, yeah. So these are the things that we have to look in. First is like same class and same name with same method name with the different parameters. Okay. So let's go and try to create some classes here. So here I'm going to create a class called, what can we take as like, okay, let me take shape classes. Okay, so here I'm going to create link provide shape. Okay, so here we are saying it as like a shape, but we did not define it. So I'm going to call it as like undefined shape. Okay, so now okay, so let's say it is a circle. Okay, so it's a circle. Now you see that we have undefined shape and this is like without parameter and this is like parameter, but still we have like, see, the method name is same, but we have a different parameters here. Okay, we have different parameters. So can be name, can be size. Okay, so what is like int size? And, okay, so we can take int size circle and its size is like a radius something 2 pi or something that we can define. So if you are taking size, that is fine. Radius name, length and breadth. Okay. So in case of rectangle, we have length and breadth. Okay. Okay, so here we can call it as like okay. And we have seen one is like we have a shape which is like which does not have any parameters, and here we have like a 1 second. Yeah. So here you can see circle. Let us take size of this circle is something 2 pi r or something. Okay. So we can calculate. Let us take like we are going to give that like radius, length, breadth, and this circle would be like I mean name of this shape would be some square. Okay. Square will have like what is the formula for calculating the square? So here it is
Side
like
square.
yes, it is like length into breadth. And here it is like 2 pi r. So take the values like into some 2.143 I'm not sure like what is that value. So here 2 pi r. Okay. So radius is like I'm going to take the radius.
It's 2.14159.
2.159.
14159. Yes.
Okay. So square is like what is that square that we have? 4 into all sets, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's take this is like one kind of parameter that we have passed. Only one parameter. I'll say this one as like square. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is like I have created 4 methods. Our 4 methods will have the same name, but we have different parameters. Okay, so how this will work as part of like overloading. Okay, now you see, I'm just going to create object for this class. I'll say shape class equals to new shape class. Okay, so now don't have any constructor here. I need to call them methods. Okay, shape class dot shape. If you say which one will be executed, we have 4 methods here, but undefined shape will be executed because at the runtime it will check and go and execute this. Now I'm going to call. Let us take. I'm going to give some parameters here. Okay, so now you see if it is empty, but still it is going and matching with the parameters, right? So whatever parameters we have defined here, so number of parameters arguments we have is like 1. Okay, that will say undefined and square. Okay, so here just I'm passing is like a empty string, but it is matching here. Okay, you see shape. I'll say it is like a rectangle. Okay, so rectangle, I'm going to give some values. Some radius is like some 20. Okay, so circle. So here rectangle, give some length is 4 and breadth is 5. So what is it doing here is like and you see. So here we have one parameter. Here we don't have any parameters defined. So I'm going to define one parameter. So it's like only I'm just going to give this string like a parameter. This is like undefined. We don't have any parameter set. Here we have one parameter and we have 2 parameters, and here we have 3 parameters. Okay. What it does is like at the compile time, it's going to check for this particular parameter, so particular method with the parameters that we are passing. Now you see we have a method and we have a parameters here. Okay. So what it does is like it will go and try to check whether this particular method is available in this class or not. Okay. So let me go and execute it. Now you see. So what it is doing is like undefined square and circle. We have calculated the circle. Okay. 2 pi r area circumference. What is that circle formula that we have? And here is like we have a rectangle, and rectangle also length into breadth. It is calculating and it's providing this. Okay. So in simple terms, overloading can be achieved in the same class. And if we have a same method name with different parameters. Okay. With the different parameters. Are you clear with this, guys?
Yes, Shrikant.
Okay. And other thing is like I'll show you another example. Now you see it says like duplicate method string shape name. Okay. So let me just go and execute this and try to. It is executing, but still we have some duplicate methods here. It is showing like duplicate methods. Okay. See, one other important thing, guys. So I'll show you. This is very important in case of variable number of arguments. Okay. So here, when do we get the ambiguity? So when do we get the ambiguity? Okay. Before this, I'll talk about like variable number of arguments. Okay. How do we use this? Var args.
Shrikant, can we continue this tomorrow as I'm having some work, personal work?
Okay. So when do you want me to? Shall we connect on Monday?
Yeah, we will connect on Monday. Is it related to the same polymorphism?
Yeah, polymorphism. This is like overloaded, and yeah, this after this I'll stop it. Okay. So we can connect.
Okay. You can continue this.
Yeah. So now you see variable arguments. So now I have created the main method, and I'm going to have these two methods. Okay, public void test and int. So we can define variable number of arguments in this way. Okay, so I'm going to give a. I'm just using. So this is nothing but this also called as like variable arguments, and other thing is like we can use like this also. Okay, so 3 dots. After 3 dots, we can do like, for example, I'm going to take, how this will be stored is like, it will be stored as form of the array. Okay, so before this, I'll show you. I want to pass something from the console, and I want to read the variable values. Whatever I'm passing as like a string, I want to read them. Now you see, I'm just giving it as like args of 0, args of 1, args of 2. I'll just try to run configuration. So I need to pass the arguments here. See, here the arguments are given. So here I can give okay, so this is nothing but we can configure and we can get the arguments read from the main method also. Okay, so main method also. Now you see when you say run, let me create object for this guys first again. Args equals to args already. Configuration arguments. Configuration. Okay, it's taking one at a time. Easy. This is something missing here. I'm just creating it. Not passing it. So run configuration. We have arguments here. Okay. Let me see. You got this right. So here you can see that we are trying to pass this parameters from this particular session. Here it should execute, though we don't have this on configuration. We can set the arguments. Now we are getting it, right? So this is like another way when we try to pass the parameters from the main method. Okay, so this is nothing but we are going to pass the parameters to this main method also. So how do we print them? So we can use this args, whatever we are defining as part of this, and we can pass with the help of like run configurations. So here also it should accept this, but yeah, we have Shanite. So it was like it was taking up the previous program, so that's the reason why it was not executing. Now you see, so we got this parameters also, right? So we can do it from the run configuration also. We can set the arguments from the run configurations. When you want to set the arguments from the run configuration, it's like we are passing the parameters through the main method. So this is kind of like another approach that we can pass as like a varargs. So here I'll delete this one and I'm going to create the varargs, and here I'm going to create a method public void variable number of arguments, in the sense I'm not sure like how many number of parameters or values that will be passed as like arguments. Okay, in that case what we do is like we are going to use the var arguments. I'm not sure like what is the size of it. Okay, size of it in the sense I'm not sure like what is the how many number of values that I'm going to pass as like a parameter. Okay, so now I'm going to take it as like int I is equal to 0 because we have the array, right? So that is the reason why we have to take the arrays. So here I want to print the values of u. So when do we use this varargs? When we are not sure of like number of parameters that are being passed. Okay, now you see I can pass one. Okay, so variable dot varargs dot test. I'll give it this way. Now we are see. Now go and execute. We got one. Okay, now you see I'm going to pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Go and execute it. So what it is doing now? It is executing this one also. I am going to. I'll put one command. Here I'll just remove the one. And here I'm going to put something like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 14. Okay. So here now what I'm going to do is like I'll just see how many number of times I'm calling. The same method is being called, right? So now you can see that the same method is being called at the multiple times. Now there is a catch. Now you see, I'm not going to use the varargs, but I'm going to use this some I. So I want to print the value of I. And the thing is like I'm going to use this varargs and I'll pass it as like okay. So now you see which method will be called. Try to print it here. Varargs called. One param called. Okay, so one param called, here also one param called, because now what it does is like it's going to go and check for this number of parameters at here. This is nothing but overloading. Okay, so same name with different parameters. Okay, same name with different parameters. Now it's like you can see test one is like tests are calling this method, and rest of the things like we have number of parameters what exceeding the one, it is calling the var. Okay, see the other example is like this simple example I'm going to show you. Like now here I have like int j. So 2 param, in this case, I'm going to use int comma. Execute this. See, where are called. Okay. So this we don't have any value in it. So that is the reason why it is not calling. Okay. So comma 3. So it will check for the number of parameters. Now you see, you have 2 parameters, so it will going to call this 2 parameters. It is exceeding that one, so it's going to call this particular parameter. Okay, so now you can see the 2 param. I'm just going to execute this. So it will say the 2 parameters. Okay, so wherever it is like 2 parameters finding, it's going to print those 2 parameters. Okay, I and J are something whatever we are passing. Okay. Okay, Utkarsha. So just I want to show you like this is another way when we are using the varargs. So I'll show you like how do we exactly have the conflicts or ambiguity of it. Okay. So when you are doing the overloading. So overriding we'll discuss on Monday. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Utkarsha. Yeah, bye.